Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel, watching over geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Doing something a little bit different today. I will be reviewing an entire season all at once. Excuse me. Today we will be looking at Season 1 of Nomad of Nowhere. Nomad of Nowhere is a web series released by Rooster Teeth, the company responsible for such hits as Red vs. Blue and Ruby, which, if you couldn't tell, I am a bit of a Ruby fan. But why am I doing this? And why am I doing this way? Well, if you saw my channel last year, I attempted to react to Nomad of Nowhere as it was coming out. And there were a lot of problems. Most of which were still me figuring out how to computer. And because of that, a lot of the reactions I recorded came out not good. In fact, you can see this in a couple of my early videos on them, that some of them were double features in a way, because the first reaction I did always seemed to be compromised of some sort, so I would do a little review of that episode and then react to the next episode. And then series fatigue caught up with me, which, yeah, that's a thing. I have been getting series fatigue a lot faster lately. So, it's one of the reasons why I haven't finished Ruby reviews, because I haven't finished Volume 6 yet. And I really need to get on that. Someone's car alarm is going off, so that's what that is. Anyway, so I figured, because I did finally catch up and finish the series, that I would just review the season as a whole. And I am going to give a spoiler warning right now. I may go into spoilers, but hopefully I won't, because, again, I'm reviewing the season as a whole, so I don't think I'll be able to get into the finer points as much. But if you do want to avoid spoilers, in the description box below, there will be a link to Rooster Teeth's website and the Nomad of Nowhere page, because now the series is free to view. Also, the first, I think, 5 or 6 episodes are on YouTube, because in the middle of that, Rooster Teeth made their decision to, because of YouTube's business practices, to switch purely to their own website. So, yeah, links to the Rooster Teeth website where it is free to watch. So what's the story of Nomad of Nowhere, or at least Season 1? Nomad of Nowhere is a fantasy Western, which, just straight up, I love that idea. The Western is one of my favorite genres. One of my favorite movies of all time is the True Grit remake. Yeah, I actually think it's better than the original. And I like this, and I feel that the Western is sort of a genre that, as we go along, it's starting to die out. Like, I think it's been a few years since we got the last Western release, and I'm trying to remember what it was even called. Yeah, and I like this idea of mixing other genres with Western. Like, I feel more often than not we get it with science fiction, but, I like this combination alone, fantasy and Western. And it's set in this desert land called Nowhere, where magic has been outlawed. It is illegal. And basically, the Nomad of Nowhere is wanted because he is supposedly the last known magic user in existence. And that's where the story sort of begins. As that first episode goes on, we meet a lot of the main characters that we'll be following throughout this series, and we get a little more of the plot. For example, even though the Nomad is painted out to be a villain, he is actually innocent. He is pretty much harmless. Pretty much. That's something we'll get into. And how do I go on from that? Do I want to start with the characters? Okay, I guess we'll start with the characters. So the way the story begins, the way the series begins, we are introduced to the characters hunting the Nomad. There is Toth, who is the leader of this group hunting him, called the Dandelions, which I just realized is a pun on dandelions. Wow. And Toth, I have notes, and I guess I'll have to get back to her as well. And we meet her sidekick, Scout. Scout is the sidekick. She is a people pleaser. She's eager to jump into adventure. She's very fun-loving. She's very joyous. Like, of all the people we meet in this series and in Nowhere, Scout is probably the happiest character we meet. And she has an interesting arc as the series goes on that I'll have to get back to. Wow! And then really after that, the rest of the Dandelions are sort of supporting cast. Our main three are Jethro, Santi, and Null, who have really funny banter and really funny dialogue interacting with Toth and with each other. Like, in the penultimate episode, as they're coming back to their base of operations, Santi is very philosophical, by the way, and him, Jethro, and Null always get into these conversations, and in episode 11, season 1 is 12 episodes, as they're coming back home, Santi has this philosophical thing he talks about. I forget what it is, which is why I'm being so vague, and Null is finally just like, I really wish you never learned how to read. And it's a lot of like that, like, and it feels like the jabs against each other that they have, they're in good nature. Like, some of the best dialogue comes from these three side characters just being friends and supporting each other and poking jabs at each other. And then we meet the Nomad, who I love. The Nomad is probably my favorite character in the show. For one thing, he never speaks, and when we get his backstory in episode 8, we learn why that is, but, you know, the Nomad is absolutely adorable. He's really well animated. Actually, across the entire series is really well animated. And, as explained, the Nomad is magic, and what his magic is when he claps, he brings inanimate objects to life. And shenanigans ensue. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a sec, along with some of the other characters. But, yeah, the Nomad is absolutely adorable. I love how he's animated. I love his design because it just looks so innocent. And one of the things I love is that even though he doesn't speak at all, you know, it's not even like Boomhauer where it's just gibberish. He's completely mute. He's so expressive, like the way he moves and the way he gestures, you can tell what he's saying. And I just love how it's animated. And now I'll come back to Toth, because speaking about Toth, who is the leader of the Dandelions, will allow me to move on to the villains, and we can go on from there. Toth, for me personally, because I know everyone is different, is a frustrating character. But to her credit, I think in terms of narrative, in terms of writing, she's supposed to be. Like, I'm going to make a Game of Thrones reference here, and I don't think it's going to work because I only watched a few episodes of Game of Thrones before I decided it wasn't for me. But based on what I've been reading about Season 8, I think the comparison works kind of well. Toth is like Jaime Lannister. You know, she has a very strong sense of morals. Like, she knows what's right and she knows what's wrong. And she knows she is very often in the wrong. She's on the wrong side of things. You know, because of who she serves and the decisions she makes. However, every time she shows a sense of evolving, of learning, of making development, she backtracks. And yeah, every time she backtracks, like every time she steps forward, I always get kind of fascinated. I always like her a little bit more. But then she backtracks, and it just gets frustrating. Especially, well, no, not especially, but no, I'm not going to even talk about the finale there, because I do think what happens with her in the finale because of this is really effective. I do think it works really well, and it's some of the best character work with Toth. And so who is hunting down the Nomad? Well, Nowhere is ruled by a man named El Rey, the king. And we don't really get a lot of him in season 1. He's built up a lot, though. And below El Rey are his lieutenants, the governors. Gonna put that one on hold for a bit, just like El Rey. And even below that, we have the Dons, who, rule smaller patches of lands than the governors, and I think they even fall under the governor's jurisdiction. We get a little bit of this hierarchy here, but it's not fully explained. And that is where our main antagonist of this season comes in. Because Toth, Scout, and the Dandelions serve a Don named Don Paragon. And he wants the Nomad, he wants him captured so he can claim the bounty, give him to El Rey, and get promoted to a governor. And Don Paragon is a surprisingly effective villain. Like, in his first appearances, he's actually kind of hilarious. It's hard to want to go into details. Like, he's sort of that stereotypical effeminate man. But as the series goes on, we see he's got a dark side to him, and he becomes threatening and imposing. Like in one episode, after Toth loses the Nomad again, he is chastising Toth for her failure. And when one of the Dandelions speaks out of line, he throws his sword. Don Paragon throws his sword through him. And we see this sort of hunt for the Nomad consume him as well. Like, his putting on airs, his want to be recognized, it's really hiding a really unstable man. And he never becomes too frightening, but I think because the series has a lot of comedy to it, even after sort of the dark shift in the series, I think that still works. The other main antagonist of the series is Red Manuel, who is also another really funny character, because every time he speaks in the third person, so it's like, Red Manuel will show you who is superior. But he's a joke, and every time he addresses himself or speaks, there's this little Spanish guitar riff, and it's a running joke that is funny, and he is the bottom of the ladder. Like, no one appreciates him, everyone steps all over him, and he is basically the ass kisser, because he also wants a form of status and social climbing. And I just forgot something. Oh well. But yeah, and I feel like this character could have been annoying, but I feel like the humor around him and the way the characters talk about him, it helps the humor pay off. Like, in the final episodes, Red Manuel captures the Nomad and brings him to the Oasis. And because he's separated from the Dandelions to do this, and when the Dandelions come back and they realize Red Manuel captured the Nomad, Santi, Jethro, and Noel are basically like, oh, that's why it's so quiet. Honestly, I thought he died. I'll never wish for anything again. And the entire time he's just like, guys, Red Manuel has feelings, And like I said, this kind of character could have had the potential to be annoying, but it worked really well. And we do meet one of the governors, who will probably be a bigger threat as the series goes on, but it was just sort of a cameo role here, named Governor Toro, who is a giant, I'm going to say minotaur. I don't know if he's just like a bull man or a full-on minotaur, who reigns from a palace, for lack of a better word, called the Colosseum. And yeah, he only shows up for one episode, but that exchange between him and Don Paragon is great. Now, where else do I want to go? So I'll talk a little bit more about the series itself. So, in the first episode, Toph has been and the Dandelions and Scout have been searching for the Nomad for some time, and they finally find him. That is how the episode begins, which forces the Nomad to go on the run. So, a lot of these episodes are pretty much, Dandelions, the Nomad goes out and tries to do a nice thing. The Dandelions find him. Hijinks ensue. It's basically a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoon. But it never feels like that. It never feels like a rehash. It never feels stale. The slapstick is all really great. And I really think that helps the episode. Because the animation is really good too. The characters move good. The flow is nice. And like I said, the animation on the Nomad is great. Especially in these slapstick moments. If I had to say something, and I'm pulling up the series real quick so I can get the episode names, I'd say the weakest episode is episode 7, Eagle Canyon, because it's still doing that Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner shtick, and at this time it's like, it starts to get a little repetitive, but thankfully at the end of the episode, it shifts to a different type of story. It's not just that Roadrunner shtick anymore. It kind of is in the next episode, but like I said, the series starts to shift from this point on. Is there anything else on the overall plot I want to get to? Because what I'm planning to do is I'm gonna end this review with the episode highlights of this season. So I'm trying to figure out if there's anything in the broad strokes I want to talk about before I get to those episodes. Nope, I guess we'll just get right to it. So, episode highlights. Episode 1, The Dreaded Nomad. This is a great introduction to the series. It establishes several of the main characters really well, and it sets up the premise really well while having great moments of slapstick and action. Episode 3, Trouble on Purpose. This episode starts sort of an arc that the Nomad goes through, because he's been in isolation all this time, all these centuries. Yes, he is centuries old, and episode 1 establishes that. And he's always hidden away. He's always ran. And episode 3 starts his arc from being a runner and turning into a fighter. Nah, episode 4 is good, but I'm not saying it's a highlight. Episode 5, The Kindness of Strangers. This is the first major shift in the series. I call this one the shit just got real episode. Aside from a fantastic and unsettling and creepy performance from Shannon McCormick, who guest stars as an Undertaker in this episode, this is where the series starts to take a darker turn and starts to evolve from this lighthearted Roadrunner cartoon into a more serious action fantasy series. Episode 6, El Rey. Oh, and I just realized this is where most of the spoilers are going to be. So, episode 6, the Nomad learns El Rey's backstory. And wow, I just blanked hard. And, and as the Nomad is stranded in this castle, he sees these flashbacks of how El Rey became who he is. And they do a different type of animation for it. It's very much the tale of three brothers from Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, done in that style, and it's really effective. This is also sort of the beginning of Scout's own arc, which will progress from, which will really get its, which kind of starts here, but will really get its footing in later episodes. Episode 10, The Witch in the Night. This episode is entirely a flashback and gives us the Nomad's backstory. It explains why he doesn't talk, it explains where he came from, and it shows us his past as he remembers it, because, as we learn, he did not remember where he came from, and it is one of the most heartbreaking, beautiful episodes in the show. And finally, the two-part finale, episode 11, The Red Carpet, and episode 12, Fiesta. This two-part finale really ends the sort of mini story of this series and propels the Nomad into the grander scheme of things. Again, a lot of really great action sequences, good comedy. We are, despite, after all the mentions and all the build-up, we kinda meet El Rey in person. And holy crap, that scene is just utterly chilling and amazing. So, I can't think of anything else to talk about. Yeah, that's my thoughts on Nomad of Nowhere. I'm excited for Season 2. I haven't heard anything much about Season 2, if there's even going to be a Season 2, but what did you think? Start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and then click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. In the description box below, you'll see the link to my Twitter, where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. And is also in the description box below will be the link to Nomad of Nowhere, and is the link to my Ko-fi, where if you like what you see, you can help support the channel and help it to grow. This is Sir Jet. No, it's not. This is the Sentinel, watching over geekdom, and I'll see you guys next time.